Alrighty, we tried to film this last night and it didn't quite work out. So let's try this again. Welcome back to Outlier by Lisa Beeson. On to chapter 16. Everybody behave and everybody be quiet. Awesome. Let's do this. As the Talisman was making its way back towards Key West, Cam and Ari were up on the sun deck, eating lunch, since neither of them were in the mood to eat with Kale. They were laughing and joking around when they heard what sounded like the rapid whoomp, whoomp, whoomp of a helicopter propeller. They dropped their food and looked around to see where the noise was coming from. Ari spotted it in the distance and pointed it out to Cam. She focused in on it and saw that it was a black, unmarked helicopter. "What the?" Cam exclaimed as they realized it was headed straight for them. Her scalp started to tingle fiercely with fear. "It's the suits," she breathed. The side door to the helicopter's fuselage opened, and an armed man started firing at the water just behind the boat. Cam pushed Ari down on the ground and got on top of her in hopes of shielding her. A voice came over a loudspeaker. "Hand the girl over or we'll sink the ship." Cam stood up and shouted, "Never!" while making a rude hand gesture. The armed man started shooting again, and Ari grabbed Cam and sifted down to the master's deck, where Kale grabbed both of them and shoved them into his suite. "Stay down!" he yelled as he shut the door. Ignoring his instructions, Cam and Ari both crouched over to the window and peeked through the curtains to see Reed and Tober run up to the master's deck with the black footlockers she'd noticed earlier. Like a well-oiled machine, they opened the footlockers up and started to assemble a small arsenal of weaponry. Tober put together what looked like a rocket launcher, while Reed and Kale shot sporadic bursts of gunfire at the helicopter with semi-automatic rifle as a distraction. The noise was so loud that Cam and Ari had to cover their ears. Tober aimed and shot the RPG right at the cockpit of the helicopter. It hit its mark, and the whole thing exploded in a bright, concussive blast of fiery carnage, debris, and shrapnel flying in all directions. Bits and pieces of the enemy aircraft landed on the yacht and in the water behind them. Ari turned from the destruction and slid down the wall, still covering her ears and folding in on herself, burying her face in her knees. Did that really just happen? Tears spilled down her face. She knew that this wasn't like an action movie where nameless extras were killed and there were no consequences. There had been living, breathing people with lives and families on that helicopter, and now they were dead because of her, because she had been so stupid and careless. Cam sat down next to her and enveloped her in his arms, leaning his head against hers. "It's all my fault," she said between sobs. "People are dead because of me, because of my actions." "What are you talking about?" he said like she was being stupid. "It was either them or us, Ari. They chose this. They fired first. Do you understand that?" Cam moved to sit in front of her. "You understand those were the bad guys, right?" She brought her face up from her knees, and Cam brushed her hair away from her face and tucked it behind her ears. "I understand," she breathed, still feeling the guilt of their deaths on her shoulders. "I will always choose us living over them," he said, looking into her eyes. Ari nodded, knowing that she would have shot them down herself if they had hurt Cam. But the reality of it all was a lot for her to take in. Kale opened the door and looked down at them. "You okay?" "Yeah, we're good," Cam answered, still looking at Ari. Ari wiped at her face and nodded. "Go down to your cabins until I say otherwise. We're making a detour." They went down to Ari's cabin and camped out on her bed with all the junk food they could pillage from the kitchen. They tried to watch a documentary on chimpanzees to distract themselves from what just happened. Meanwhile, the Talisman made its way to Cuba instead of Key West. The ship had plenty of fuel since they had planned on a much longer trip. From Cuba, Cale chartered a private jet, and the 5 of them bounced around, changing planes in the Canary Islands, Portugal, and Denmark. Then, when they were sure no one was following them, they flew back to England. No one had said anything about what had happened. Cam was still ignoring Cale, and Ari didn't need a lecture to compound her guilt for putting them all in danger. So they both avoided him, and he didn't seem to mind. When they got back to Artemir, Cam and Ari were absolutely exhausted and went straight to their rooms. Cale told them that training started up again at 5:45 a.m. sharp. The next morning, Ari went down to the gym, and it was only her and Cale. She went straight to the treadmill and started running without a word. Cam hadn't been in his room when she had checked before coming down, so she tracked him and found he was already out with Tober. When Ari was finished running, she had a very therapeutic session with the punching post. It was sparring day, so next she walked over to Cale, catching the bow staff he threw to her. She had already mastered throwing knives and using them in close-range combat, and this was now her 5th session working with the bow staff. He came at her spinning the staff in front of him, and then swiftly swung it at her legs. She deflected the strike, then lunged forward, thrusting her staff towards his abdomen. He sifted out of the way and came up behind her, ready to bring his staff down on her head. She lifted hers with both her hands above her head, just in time to block the strike, then sifted and twisted at the same time to force his staff away and swung a strike at his hip. She had learned that short bursts of sifting didn't drain her as much as long spans, so Cale only attacked in short bursts as well, so they could train longer. He pivoted out of the way and deflected her strike in a way that forced the staff out of her hands, and then he came at her like he was going to pin her down to the mat by her neck. She grabbed the staff in between his hands and rolled backwards, using his momentum against him, and flipped him over onto the mat. He recovered quickly, and she was just able to miss another swipe as she sifted over to her own staff, picking it back up and recovering into a defensive stance. Cale spun his staff from side to side across his body and began to circle her. "Reed said I should talk to you about what happened." She stood her ground and followed his progression warily. "I don't want to talk about it." "Good. Neither do I." Then he came at her with such force that when she blocked his strike, both their staffs broke into pieces. Not missing a beat, he went to hammer fist the side of her head. She sifted out of the way, pivoting into him and grabbing his arm that was still moving towards where her head had been. She bent at her hips and flipped him over her shoulder, but before he hit the ground, he twisted in the air and landed on his feet, refocusing the force of energy to their arms, and twisted her so painfully that all she knew was that she needed it to stop before something broke. Then, with a latent reflex she hadn't realized she even possessed, she pulled the pain away from her arms. It felt like the opposite of when she amped someone. Instead of the energy going out, she brought it into herself, and she saw the radiant light around Cale's arms get sucked into her own, making her feel like she was 10 times stronger. It was kind of like when Cam had shared his energy with her when she had lost so much blood. Except instead of sharing, she was siphoning the energy from Cale, and the extra power felt so incredibly amazing, like ambrosia from the heavens. It was the best feeling she had ever felt in her entire life, as if all her pleasure endorphins had just flooded her system. She felt immortal. It was absolutely intoxicating, like she was high on the best drug in the world, and she never wanted it to stop. She was about to pull in some more when she realized Cale was screaming out in excruciating pain and had fallen to the ground, convulsing at her feet. She looked down at him in heart-piercing horror. Almost all of his radiant energy was gone. His skin was gray, and he was dying. Panicking, she pushed out and channeled all the energy she possessed back into him, making him almost 10 times brighter than he had been originally, draining herself down to practically nothing. Then she quickly dropped his arms as if they had just burned her, and stepped away. He gasped like the breath of life had just reinflated his lungs. He was so bright she couldn't even look at him without it hurting her eyes. The instant drain of so much of her own energy was a shock to all the nerves in her body, and she started shaking uncontrollably. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, she cried over and over as she backed away from him, horrified. She had almost killed him. She had practically drained all of his life force, and she had enjoyed it. She had craved it, and like an addict, despite this knowledge, she still wanted more. She turned and tried to run as fast as she could away from Cale and the important thing she had just done. But she had given him too much of her own energy, and she crashed painfully to the floor before she made it to the door. Unable to get back up, she tried to curl up into a ball as her muscles contracted, and she continued to convulse like she was having a grand mal seizure. Cale sifted over to her and tried to pick her up off the floor, but she flailed weakly and screamed for him to let her go. No! Don't touch me! I don't want to hurt you! She was too weak to fight him off, and he corralled her easily. While trying not to hurt her with all the extra strength she had just given him, he sat back against the wall with her in his lap and tried to keep her from shaking so violently by holding her close to him with his solid arms and whispering into her ear, "Shh, you're not going to hurt me. I'm okay." Realizing that he wasn't going to let her go, she quit fighting and buried her face into his shoulder, clutching onto his shirt like it was the only thing keeping her from being sucked into the black hole of self-loathing and despair. I'm so sorry, Cale, she breathed out shakily. I almost killed you. But you didn't, he said. You could have, but you didn't. Please don't hate me, she whispered despondently. I don't hate you, Ari. It was my fault. I knew you might be a Fluxi, but I wasn't careful. I hurt you too much, and your instincts fought back. Her body had finally begun to regulate itself, and the shaking was slowly beginning to subside. What are you talking about? What's a Fluxi? She asked. I had always thought that they were just a myth. The Fluxi were beings that would genetically crop up every millennium or so in Anu, who had the potential to control the energy flows of the cosmos. They were gods amongst gods, but no one had seen or even heard of one for a very long time. It's said that because everyone was so afraid of their infinite power and the destruction they could wreak, they were hunted down as children and killed while they were still vulnerable. It had been thought that the genetic strain had been completely eradicated. He paused. It's no wonder they went to such extremes to hide you. Not only are you an illegal Dazen iron hybrid, you're a goddamn Fluxi. He let out a mirthless laugh and shook his head at the insanity of it all. You hold the power of the cosmos in your hands, girl. I don't want that power. Not if it's at the expense of others' lives. I know. That's why I didn't kill you when I first suspected it back in Chicago. What? She said, starting to struggle to get out of his grasp again. He just held on to her tighter. Calm down. I said that's why I didn't kill you, and I'm not going to. You're safe with me, Ari. I promise. She stopped struggling, and he loosened his hold a bit. But this stays between you and me. If anyone knew what you really were, you'll have more than just the suits after you. Humans have a very long history of destroying things that they fear. You have to stay in control of this, and you cannot tell anyone. Not even Cam. Understood? Yes, she said weakly. She felt bad about keeping something from Cam, but she didn't exactly want to broadcast the fact that she could drain the life force from someone. She was so utterly disgusted by what she did, she could barely admit it to herself. The feeling she had draining Cale's energy. She couldn't even think about it without loathing herself. Ruby's prophecy about the two saplings, where one grew strong in the light and one was stunted and twisted from growing in the dark, made sense to her now. If she hadn't been raised by such a remarkable family who had given her such a strong moral foundation, she wouldn't have been able to stop herself. She wouldn't have even wanted to. The feeling had been so incredibly delicious. And that was just from one person. What if she siphoned from as many people as she was able to amp? No one would be able to stop her. She would be all-powerful. Good Lord, I'm a monster. No better than the Shades. She understood why the people of Anu had been so afraid of the Fluxi. They could decimate whole populations on a whim. Maybe it would be best if you did kill me. No. He positioned her in his lap so she faced him. Remember when I told you I was able to see the potential in my soldiers? What set them apart from the others? Unable to look him in the eyes, she just nodded. You are genuinely good, Ari. You're generous to a fault. The fact that your first instinct was to give, and it took you this long to take, says so much about you. If it had been anyone else, and I mean anyone, I would be dead right now. You had enough strength and self-control that as soon as you realized what you were doing, you stopped. And not only that, you almost killed yourself trying to give me back more than I started off with. If anyone deserves to be, or is even capable of being a Fluxi, it's you. He gently grabbed her face between his hands to make her look up at him. Look me in the eyes and tell me you believe me. I need you to believe me, because I won't kill you. I can't. She wanted to believe him so badly. They both knew this was a pivotal moment in the battle for her soul between good and evil. She was on the precipice, trying to hold on to the light with everything she had as the darkness tried to entice her with its seductive pull and overwhelm her. Her eyes flicked up to look into his opalescent eyes, and she saw that he had let down all his defenses. The wall was down, and he was letting her in to see the truth of his words. You can control this, Ari. That's why I push you so hard. Because when it comes down to it, the only one you can truly count on is yourself. And the stronger you are, the more you are able to choose to keep fighting and never give up, the better off everyone will be. You have the limitless potential for greatness, to make a positive difference in the lives of others. He truly believed every word he had just said. He wasn't afraid of her. He believed she was good. He believed in her. I can do this. I'm good. And with that affirmation, the darkness receded. The light poured in, and she fell against him, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. This is an important part of the book. She couldn't help herself from using the last bit of energy she had to emanate an all-consuming feeling of love for him. He had been the only link holding on to her and keeping her from falling into the darkness. In that moment, she didn't even care if he loved her back, as long as he knew how much she appreciated what he had just done for her. He just sat there, holding her securely in his arms for a moment, until she had expended all the meager energy she had left and started to black out. You need rest, he said, standing up and carrying her limp body out of the gym towards the stairs. The last thing she was semi-conscious of before completely blacking out was the feel of her soft bed beneath her and a light kiss on her forehead. Ari slept for almost 72 hours. When she woke up, Kale told her that she could take a break from training for a week or so, which she very much appreciated. Her heart and mind were still in turmoil over what she was capable of, so she fell back on what she used to do when she needed to work through something that was bothering her: playing the piano. She had to find her way to reach her own karmic balance. She cloistered herself in the music room and played for hours, clearing her mind and letting the music flow through her. She lost herself in the tonal vibrations and let them heal her tortured soul. Time lost all meaning, but every once in a while she would notice a plate of... Hey! Mess with your sister and you're going back in your kennel. Stop it. Oh, you're so darn cute. Why do you gotta be so darn cute? You goof. Mwah. I love you. But leave your sister alone. Time lost all meaning, but every once in a while she would notice a plate of food resting on a tray beside her. So she would take breaks when her body called for them, continuing to play with only one hand, or humming while she did so. And when she was spent, she would sleep on one of the music room's stiff, uncomfortable couches. Then the next morning, she would get up and continue playing. No one interrupted or tried to stop her. She was aware of Gemma, Cam, and Connor's presence every now and then, just sitting there and enjoying her music. She even felt Kale walk by and stand in the doorway every once in a while. This went on for days. Some of the pieces she played were ones written by other people, but some were melodies that just came to her at the spur of the moment. Some intense, some melancholy, some joyful, and some that just brought her a sense of solace. Then one afternoon she ended a song, and she just felt done. Without thinking a single thought while she played, she had been able to work it out. Yes, she was capable of being a monster, but it was a choice. She had shown that she was stronger than the seductive temptation for power. She was in control. Hey! What did I just say? One more time. No. One more time you bug your sister, you're taking a time out. Leave her alone and settle down. She was in control of her actions and who she wanted to be. And she wanted to be someone her parents could be proud of. Transit umbra elu perstat. The shadow had passed, and the light remained. Her decision was clear and steadfast. She would trust in her light and shine through the darkness. Cam was in the library doing some schoolwork on his laptop. And you're done. One moment. Back. Cam was in the library doing some schoolwork on his laptop when he noticed the silent stillness. She had stopped playing. He didn't know what was going on with Ari, why she had slept for 3 days straight and then had felt the need to go on a manic piano-playing frenzy. He thought maybe it had something to do with what happened with Wes and the fact that she had taken the deaths of those suits pretty hard. But whatever it was, he wasn't too worried. She was still eating and sleeping, and the music was gorgeous. If it had been anyone else playing for hours on end for almost 4 days straight, he'd be pulling his hair out by now. But Ari's music was different. She had gone through a whole gamut of songs across an array of different genres, and tweaking them in a way that made them all her own. The songs he didn't recognize moved through him in a way music had never affected him before. It was beautiful. Kale had told everyone that she was working through something, and they should let her be, so they did. But when the pull of the music became too strong, he just had to be in the room with her and let the music wash over him. It seemed like Gemma and Connor felt the same way. Connor said that he had been working outside when he heard the music, and he just had to come in and listen. Even the dogs would sit outside the window to hear it, and Norma never left the music room. Cam sat there listening to the silence and realized that the music had stopped longer than her usual amount of time for breaks. She's done. He closed his laptop and ran out of the library towards the music room. Running in his socks, he managed to slide through the music room door on the polished wood floor to see her calmly sitting on the piano bench with a peaceful, serene look on her face. Sorry, I'm still crying. He had so many questions and wanted to say so much. What was that all about? Are you okay? Even if you aren't, it doesn't matter. I'll still be here for you no matter what. But all that came out was, you good? She looked at him in that way she does sometimes, where he just knew she understood exactly what he was feeling and what he meant to say. And the most beautiful smile spread across her face, one that shone through with love and a brilliant inner light that only she possessed. It made him feel like he was the most important person in her world. God, that smile kills me. Yeah, I'm good, she said. He sighed with relief and smiled back at her. And once again, all was right in their world. Oh, my gosh. Oh. That was the end of chapter 16. And I must say, these pages are stained from every time I read through it. Oh my gosh. That was a chapter. I don't want to ruin it with too much talking. So, thank you for joining us for chapter 16. I do believe I'll be moving on to chapter 17. Whew. After I take a break and collect myself. Ari's had 4 days to collect herself. Now I need to collect myself. Peace.